So John, there's been a lot in the press here lately. Can you clear the air and fill us in on what's going on between you and Kate?
Yeah, Kate and I have decided to separate.
Welcome down the rabbit hole, friend. We are here today to review a part of the book that really rocked my world. It's all about the John and Kate Gosselin divorce, reality style.
Yes, we have decided that we will separate.
The next two chapters include shocking revelations for me because I always had major assumptions about what went down in the Gosselin divorce.
I try to contemplate and think about it, and would it be better for us? It's just not good for our kids for us to be arguing in front of our kids.
And according to Hoffman, none of that is true. I, like many of you, assumed that it was likely. Kind of as time went on, John Gosselin started to grow some balls. And he looked around at this TLC fake paradise and decided to approach Kate and let her know, like, look, my darling, wonderful wife, I need to tell you that you've become a huge bitch. No one likes you, and especially not me. And I've realized that there are younger, nicer girls, specifically nannies, who I like a lot more. So I'm gonna head over to the jacuzzi and wait for one to show up. And then when you catch me, the two of us can, make some kind of a divorce contract because I'm ready to be free. That was my assumption. And it turns out that none of that is true.
I'm not very fond of the idea, personally, but I know it's necessary because my goal is peace for the kids.
The reality is quite different, and Hoffman brings the receipts to prove it to us. According to Hoffman, because he's a dirty little trash raccoon, many of Kate Gosselin's entries in her journal present the idea that she wanted to stay in a marriage to John. Yes, she thought he was a loser in many ways, highly critical of him, but she did like having him around to do stuff for her.
And if peace needs to be brought about by this, then I'm in agreement.
Hoffman writes, Kate was still speaking lovingly about John in her journal as late as July 2007. Okay, now this was around the time that the family was getting ready to move out of the nice, normal-sized house into a gigantic mansion with huge space for dogs to be neglected in and horses that would never arrive. So they're going to become like Reading, Pennsylvania royalty. But John starts to look around and question a few things. I mean, I assumed that he would be questioning like Kate's attitude, her countenance, the way they're treating him, but it turns out he just started questioning whether or not he should be forced to get up at 6 a.m. and attend speaking engagements.
The kids will remain living in their house. I've always called this their house. I will remain here as well during my...
Because that's really how the divorce started, according to Hoffman. You see, we talked about it before, but these speaking engagements had become like opportunities for Kate to take John and maybe some of the kids and go to predominantly white Christian venues, be it a church or some kind of community building, and talk to people who likely don't have a lot of money, just a few dollars in their pocket, and she would let them know that she had 8 miracles she needs help with taking care of. She needs you to financially support her so that these 8 miracles can have a mom who dresses in Ann Taylor.
Portion of having them. John will also come here when it is his days, and we will flip-flop that way.
They love it here. This is their house.
And these tiny elderly women would reach deep down in their pockets, pull out a few dollars, but when it all came together, it resulted in hundreds to thousands per speaking engagement that Kate was already getting paid for to participate in by TLC. They were bringing home money. I told you about how Kate was carrying around bags, grocery bags of cash that people were tithing to her at these speaking engagements. She was carrying them around, hefting them into the back of her car, because no amount is too small for Kate Gosselin to just suck suction it up with her little greedy vacuum mouth. She grabbed all those dollar bills, stuffed them way down in her G-string, in her Gosselin string. Because Kate looked around at the world and thought there would never be enough money, enough shows, enough interviews, enough stuff to keep her happy. She was worried that things were going to run out and she was gonna milk every last drop out of any cow she could find on the farm until the farmer kicks her off the property, right?
We bought this house for them, not for us. The security, the room, the land, all for them.
So, we don't know how John built up the bravery. Maybe he was just thinking to himself okay, it can't be that bad. Kate's got to see things the way that I see it. We're multimillionaires now. She can calm down a bit. So he approaches Kate and he lets her know look, Kate, we've got so much going on here. We've got our own show. The kids are doing great. They're getting older. We're moving into this multi-million-dollar mansion. We've got a saltwater pool and jacuzzi and a million nannies. And I'm just thinking that the time has come when maybe we could chill out just a little bit. I'm getting really tired. I'm getting older. Having 8 kids has really kind of sucked a little bit of the life and energy out of me. And then getting up at 5 or 6 a.m. every morning to complete all the tasks that you've set forth for me to get ready before filming, and then to do all the filming and make sure the kids act a certain way and make sure they're wearing their gymboree clothing and it's all perfect and not stained. It's getting really hard. And I was thinking to myself, here's what we could do. I'm okay with continuing to film, but maybe we could stop doing some of these speaking engagement where we manipulate the hell out of older women and take grocery bags of cash home. We got a lot of money. Maybe we could stop that. And then the other thing is secondarily, number 2, I was thinking maybe we could lessen filming a little, because we're probably not going to film our whole lives, right? The kids are getting older. Time to start moving away from the show a little bit. What do you think? This is actual video of what happened to Kate Gosselin's body when she heard what John had to say about filming and grifting from elderly ladies in church. Suffice it to say, Kate was not happy. She was shocked that John would even dare to bring up something like this with the Queen of Reading, Pennsylvania. And plus, she has millions of fans who she loyally needs to be there for, to hold out that grocery bag for them to put those dollars into. They need her. And John is trying to take her away from her own personal ministry that she's been doing for years now by grifting the heck out of the God-loving citizens of Pennsylvania. So despite the fact that Hoffman lets us know Kate had been writing in her journal, John is a good balance for me. I'm a bitch and he's not so much, so we kind of balance each other out. She had been writing this in her journal in 2007. By 2008, she was done with John. She didn't like that he brought up the idea that maybe they should chill it out a little. That was not how Gosselin's life was going to roll forward. She is a steamroller, one that requires no gasoline, guys. She's running on sunlight, pure solar energy alone. And if it starts snowing or the clouds come in, she's got a backup plan, some sort of Elon Musk type of nuclear energy disruptor going on in that steamroller so that she can just plow right through anything she comes in contact with. Hoffman writes, as soon as John finally stood up to Kate and refused to participate in taking money from well-meaning people at church, the marriage was over. The moment he wanted to stop filming, Kate no longer had a need for him. She came to view him as an enemy who threatened to destroy the rich dream world she had carefully built. So for Kate, there's no love lost. She's not but I do still love him. He was there for me. She's done. She threw up a wall of hell to the no. Her hell to the no wall was high and wide, and there was no way that John would be able to get over it or under it. And by the end of 2007, Kate wrote up a legally binding marriage contract for John to sign. According to Hoffman, John's conscience had been eating away at him. He really hated doing the speaking engagements. So he wasn't willing to back up and be like, oh, okay, Kate, you want to still do the speaking stuff? All right. He said, no, I can't do it anymore. According to Hoffman, Kate told John, like, okay, then we're going to be living separate lives. But Kate was like, okay, but wait a minute. Let me just think about that. Now that I think about it, I understand that in the legal, like, governmental system, you have legal rights to these kids, John. So let me think of, like, how can I manipulate you to make sure that you don't take them away from me? All right. Okay, so I got to give you something. She realized she couldn't just do whatever the hell she wanted. She needed to find some way to keep John quiet. She thought the way to do it would be to create a marriage contract in which John agreed to continue filming. He wouldn't have to attend like interviews or go on engagements anymore, but he would be there for the filming of the show. He would live with them and he would show up whenever the filming crew was there. He would do whatever was required of him, and then on days off, he would go and do whatever he wanted. According to Hoffman, the marriage contract said that it was fine for him to have relations with women, to live in other places, to go out clubbing, to do whatever he wants to do as long as it's not during filming. According to Hoffman, the words open marriage were used in the contract, but the contract made it clear that on days when they were filming, John had to play the dutiful husband. He needed to be who John wanted him to be in front of the camera. Now, John, he was surprised by this. Like, he kind of thought that Kate would come along with what he had to say. Maybe she would see like the error of their ways, that they didn't need to do these speaking engagements anymore, and that they could move towards not doing the show. And so he was kind of like confused and a little taken aback by all of this. So he ends up going back to his old friend, the people who knew him before he ever became Kate Gosselin's manservant. John contacted Kate's brother Kevin, Uncle Kevin, and Aunt Jody, and he was in contact with them and talking to them about everything that was going on now that they've moved into this big mansion house. Okay, so you, because you're a normal person, may remember that there was a huge falling out between Aunt Jody and John. Back then, John was still going along with what Kate wanted to do, and now he's kind of coming around and he's like, Jody, Kevin, like, can I talk to you about my life? Because I'm just like feeling a little bit confused. Like, I'm not sure. I feel this hinge like deep in my chest. It's probably heartburn. I just really hope it's not like guilt and shame and like a lot of fear about what's coming next. I do think that John started to feel confused about where he was going and what direction his life was going to take. Now, unfortunately, John is not perfect. We all know that for sure. Even though he was starting to feel like maybe we shouldn't take advantage of elderly ladies, it seems as though he was certainly willing to take advantage of women of the younger generation. Because instead of stepping up and becoming the hero we all would have loved to have seen him become, he decides to run with this whole marriage contract thing and start having relationships with much younger women, specifically girls that are the daughters of Kate Gosselin's plastic surgeon. It all gets really weird and discombobulated. Hoffman lets us know that he never gets to see the original contract. That was something he wasn't able to track down. So he's very dependent upon what Aunt Jody had to say in regards to what John told her about the contract. Hoffman writes, Kate wanted to continue to deceive the world by pretending that they were still one big happy family. John didn't want that, and he begged Kate to go to marriage counseling. That was something I wasn't expecting. He wanted to fix this marriage. That's where I think my head kind of explodes a little bit. John didn't see this as like, Kate's not a good person. He was just kind of like, if I can just like work with her and get her to see that I need to sleep in the morning, and maybe someday our kids shouldn't be used as like meat for people to feed on by watching the TLC show. If I could just like work with her with that, like just with a licensed counselor in like a very meaningful and loving way. Meanwhile, Kate was like, ching, 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 money, 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 money. She was leaving John behind in her dust because he was back at the mansion while she went to constant speaking engagements, interviews, book signings, tours all around the country, lots of spa days, breakfast, lunch, and dinner at Nobu. She was selling, selling, selling. This was Kate's heyday. Nobody knew that John was sitting at home having an affair with the nanny with the marriage contract saying that they would have an open marriage. Nobody knew about that. Kate was becoming the next Martha Stewart, and Hoffman specifically said that one of the main reasons that Kate ended up picking the $1.3 million house in Reading is because it had a separate apartment above the garage. And she was like, there you go, John. There's your space to yourself with the nanny, while I have a second nanny take care of the kids so I can fly out and, have dinner at Nobu. All right, the next chapter talks about the fact that Discovery, TLC, they completely backed Kate Gosselin from day number one. Unfortunately, Kate was probably trying to, keep it from them and cover it up, but she ended up having, they knew something was going on. She had to talk to them about it and give them some information about what was happening. This chapter starts with us finding out about the amazing t-shirt design for the Goslins t-shirt line. There were 34 different t-shirt ideas designed to promote John and Kate plus 8. One pictured Kate's glowing, smiling face with the tagline, "Kate is my role model." In this chapter, Hoffman makes it clear he has no love lost for TLC. He talks about how it's the learning channel, but it features midgets, polygamists, circus freaks, hoarders, and then Kate Gosselin. Hoffman writes, so out of 34 t-shirt designs, you would think that if there were several for Kate alone, there would be at least one shirt devoted solely to John. But of course, there was no design, because according to Hoffman from the beginning, TLC knew that Kate was the one they needed to get on board. Kate was the one they needed to deal with. She was in charge, and she was the one they would be negotiating with at all times. Even in some of the earlier contracts, John's name is actually scratched out on the compensation part of the contract, leaving Kate to control the family fortune that came from filming. In 2009, Kate and Discovery had decided that John was a major liability for the show. And they decided that they would go into full court press to defend Kate and really put out there that she was the victim of everything that happened. Hoffman writes, John wanted the show to stop to save his children. And this is where I have to intervene. We know that Hoffman is friends with John, and there's a lot of positivity about John in this book. And everything I've read and all the research I've done says that John is a good person. He's fun to be around. He's kind to be around. And I get that. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy, right? But he did also have 8 kids, and he kind of sort of abandoned them in certain ways. Now, he was around. I'm not saying he fully abandoned them, but he did get very distracted by young teenage Tale. I'm going to be really honest. 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds going to the clubs, having fun. That's not really something that I can admire about him. He also allowed Kate to do a lot of the things that she did. Now, maybe he was in an abusive relationship. We've talked about this before. I think he was. It was definitely an emotionally abusive relationship for sure. But he still had the ability to stand up to her. He was one of the few people who could have done it. He could have stood up for her for the sake of his children. So Hoffman writes, John wanted the show to stop to save his children, or for whatever other reason he may have had in his head at the time. It was well within his right as a parent to stop the filming. That had been agreed upon from the very beginning. Even Kate confirmed this many times. She said if either parent wants the filming to stop, then the filming would stop, period. That doesn't sound right. Still, John went along with Kate's plan for a while, as he had done so many times before. He laid low for a few months, but he couldn't deal with the kids filming anymore, and that's when it hit him. It's right there in the contract, he thought, under the heading termination. John would get the show stopped indirectly by his actions. The termination clause of the contract included wording that said Discovery would terminate his contract for making disparaging remarks about the program, insubordination, dishonesty, intoxication, or failure to perform services or to conduct himself the way that they wanted him to. If he brought any scandal or ridicule upon the family, then they would terminate the contract. So John went out. According to John, he's saying I did the noble thing. I kind of feel like this is guess what? I was a knight in shining armor by going out and just tarnishing my entire reputation to save my kids. I'm not sure if that's really what was going on here, but he did go out and very much tarnish his reputation. Hoffman gives us a lot of examples of tweets that John made, basically just saying I'm so sick of my kids being filmed. Okay, so John had done what he could to make himself look like an ass, and he was hoping it would rub off on the rest of his family, but it turns out that TLC was basically wait a minute. We said that you could stop at any time, but that was before you started making us millions upon millions of dollars. And now we really need this show to go on. And it turns out your Karen Barbie doll wife, Kate, is really into keeping it going. So we got to figure out something else to do here. According to Hoffman, Discovery TLC formulated a plan to just do like this huge media blitz in which they really talked up Kate and made her a victim of like just really bad relationships between herself and John. They wanted her to look like the loving, innocent victim of John's bad behavior. And let's be honest, it worked. It definitely worked for quite a period of time. According to Hoffman, TLC even started like combing through past footage of John being like short or angry at the kids and started incorporating that into more of the episodes to kind of like put out there like there's something going on with this guy. Kate is the loving and kind one here. Hoffman writes, Discovery wasn't about to give up on their biggest cash cow, Kate Gosselin. So once it was clear that filming John and Kate plus 8 with John was no longer an option, they hunkered down. They regrouped and hatched the plan to make John the bad guy and to make Kate look like the scared, hurt little victim, wondering how she was going to take care of her children all by herself, all alone, with no money, guys. Like, and just 2 dogs that she has to send back to the breeder and Steve Neild. In their quest to paint Kate as a sympathetic figure, the biggest lie of all in the divorce proceedings was still to come. Okay, the next chapter is entitled The Spin. And it's all about what happens as John and Kate like separate in the public eye and how TLC decides to spin that on the show and in the media. How Kate and TLC, they obviously like refused to say that John had been separated from Kate for a while, so he hadn't been cheating on her. They wanted to make sure it looked like John was unfaithful, he was a bad guy, a bad father, even though he was the one who wanted to get counseling from the beginning and continue to put up with this mess of a Barbie doll who wasn't even like really living with him and the kids anymore. John was beholden to the contract to continue to film for a little while and like help get the information out there about the divorce. And this is when we started to see the filming where like only Kate would be on the couch or only John would be on the couch. John was living in the garage, in the apartment over the garage in the Reading, Pennsylvania home. He was going out whenever they weren't filming and partying. He was caught many times by tabloids, drinking, being crazy, hanging out with Haley Glassman, among a wide range of other girls that were coming in and out, wearing like motorcycle t-shirts, pretending to ride motorcycles when he didn't know how. I just feel really embarrassed for John for this part of his life, having some kind of a midlife crisis. And unfortunately, it really looked like he wasn't being there for the people who needed the most help, who really needed someone to step in and be like, this has got to be hard on them. They moved to a new home. They're filming constantly. They have 2 parents. They have 2 parents who are disinterested in like their well-being. He needed to be there for his kids, and from everything I'm reading and the research I've done, he really wasn't. This little guy smells so good today. He smells so good today. Look at his little bow tie. Look at his little bow tie. He's so big now. He's so big and fluffy. Look at him. He's gonna be huge. My little farm puppy. So John, unfortunately, made a lot of bad decisions at this point in time. Things could have gone a lot differently, potentially, if he would have stood up and taken like the better legal avenues instead of focusing on his own desires to go out and party. Now Puppy is eating the corner of this book, so I'm gonna have to take a break, go pick up my kids from the bus stop. Good to see all of you here today. I hope you'll join me tomorrow as we head down another rabbit hole and talk about The Spin.